sort of a counterpoint to that would be the United Nations is at least a forum where you can have safe diplomatic exchanges about things. And if you completely destroy the United Nations or pull out so that it dissolves into nothingness, then you lose those opportunities, right, to have those dialogues. I mean, what do you think about that?
I would disagree. I mean, look, in the era of social media, you can do those things, any number of ways you could get them done. The original idea was working when all were dedicated to these same concepts and ideals. That is no longer the case. It has been completely corrupted. And eventually you're going to have to just fold it up. The U.S. contributed $500 million a year to the World Health Organization prior to the Trump administration saying it doesn't work anymore, we're out of here. 80% of that money went to travel. And then there's the tax that funds the World Health Organization. We were actually doing more for public health by pulling that $500 million back and then taking it direct to the organizations that were receiving it through the World Health Organization. And then you've got the American program PEPFAR, which sought to eradicate AIDS, Ebola, and all those things. That was $1.1 billion over. Actually, it was more than that. Anyway, it was a lot of money that didn't go through the World Health Organization. The point is, why keep these things going when they're clearly no longer suited to task, when you have other ways to go about it? And this goes to the point that the current administration feels we have to sit down and have face-to-face conversations with PRC. I did a presentation at the East-West Center called The Folly of Engagement, where I talked about the fact you shouldn't bend over backwards to get a meeting in Beijing, only be sent to Tianjin to do it via VTC. There is no real benefit to having a face-to-face conversation with these folks. So if it comes down to it, get out what my counterpart called the megaphone, and we'll have megaphone diplomacy. We'll just say the same thing we're going to say to you in private. We'll just say it in public. That has worked very well in the past to get them to go, okay. We'll go back to having private conversations, right? Megaphone diplomacy is the alternative to face-to-face meetings. There is no real benefit in having a face-to-face meeting with PRC.
Yeah, except the State Department, the State Department's job is diplomacy as they see it, right? So their job is to talk and have dialogue as from their perspective. And so even if the White House's larger goal is something else, the State Department is still pursuing dialogue at the cost of other things.
Yeah. So what I'd say is take the time that you're not wasting, going to Beijing and talking about stuff and making agreements that they're never going to follow through on, by the way. The Joint Declaration on Hong Kong is a great example. And take that time and talk to Mongolia and talk to Japan and Korea and talk to Kazakhstan, right? I mean, there's only so much time, and the president only has so much time. This was a big deal during the Trump administration that they're saying, well, the president's not spending enough time in ASEAN like Obama did. Okay, fine. There's only so much time in the day, and the president can only be in so many places at one time. Well, here's one we can just put on the shelf because these talks are not productive. When they are productive again, we should start them up again. But it doesn't mean we're not communicating. We can communicate with the ambassador who sits right here. If you saw Nick Burns, the ambassador to China, if you saw his town hall a month ago, did you guys see that?
Didn't see that one.
He was great. He finally, it took a while, but he finally came around and says, yeah, I don't get anywhere near the same access here in China that my counterpart Xie gets in DC. Well, let's fix that. Let's get the relationship. Let's go Confucian here and rectify the names, get the relationship back in a normal place, because it's not normal. It's way out of whack. Let's get back to reciprocity, start from a common basic foundation, and we can build this relationship now that PRC realizes how much they need it.
Well, let's say you were the Secretary of State. What would you do to give the U.S. a strategic advantage? How would you change this mess, frankly?
I would stop asking for face-to-face talks. When I was there, Secretary Pompeo decided that we're not going to do this anymore. This flying all over to get these worthless talks. And we just said, hey, if you guys, we're here. If you want to talk, we're here. Just let us know when you are, and we're right here. You come see us. Look at their, the guy before Wang Yi, Yang Jiechi flew out twice. Flew out in August of 19 and flew out in June of 20 to have these conversations with us. And the conversations were like, hey, can you guys tone it down a little bit? We're like, no. So if we would just stand our ground, stand on principle, work our relationships with like-mindeds in the region, and that's increasingly everybody, to include Vietnam, and let them come to us. We don't have to chase them. Oh, by the way, we still need to talk about that balloon thing, right? There's been no rectification of names on that. I would love to.
I mean, it didn't happen.
No
big deal. I'm curious, Dave. We started off talking about Russia and China, and I think we've heard from people on the show before that maybe there is given that there are a lot of competing strategic interests between the two, maybe there's a way to kind of pull a reverse Kissinger in a sense, right? Like try to get Russia on our side to contain China. What do you think about that idea?
It's poetic when you think about it, because now it's a big China. When it was a big Soviet Union, a small China, now it's a big China, a small Soviet or Russia. But I think given all that's going on in Ukraine, trying to make a deal with Putin right now would be really hard. Now, if Putin were to depart somehow and we had new leadership there, that would be a great, they call it triangulation, right? Is bring them closer to us than the other side, and isolate and contain an aggressive and disruptive power in the world. Look, I'm all for engaging with the PRC and giving them a chance to fix the problem, the mistakes they've made, but they have yet demonstrated any sense of introspection or regret. This seems to be according to plan. So if this is going to continue, we have to continue. It's not us. They have agency. They've made these decisions. We are simply responding to them.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not just a Xi Jinping thing. That is the PRC.
CCP.
Yeah.
But that's not to say they can't moderate. They can. They're entirely capable of doing that, right? They just don't want to.
It will be very interesting to see what happens in the world when there is no more Putin or Xi Jinping.
Yeah. It could be good or it could be bad. Power vacuums are dangerous things. Everybody needs to go watch The Death of Stalin one more time. Preview.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
It was a pretty wide-ranging conversation. That's my fault, but
we like to.
It is our pleasure.
Yeah. We like to do it on the show, and we'll divide this up into clips so it'll be easy for people to sample all the finest little bits. It's been a real pleasure to have you back on. We had an idea for another thing to have you on. I forget what.
Let's talk about next time. Let's talk about the antidote to PRC political warfare, and that is critical thinking, which is what I'm working on really hard here at the Air Force Academy. Is to get no kidding curriculum on how to think critically and analytically, because that solves social media ills, that solves propaganda and PRC United Front Work Department ills. It solves a lot of things, but we don't do it. It's just too hard. It's just people don't want to do it. So
there's lots of critical theory that's going around.
Yeah,
but maybe we'll have you back on in a couple months and we can talk about that.
You bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Always a pleasure. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
It's always weird when talking about China, because there's this sense that they have this strategic master plan to dominate the world, but then it's also completely incompetent and incapable of doing anything.
Well, the problem is that people have to carry out the strategic master plan to dominate the world.
But some things are going well, like their influence in the WHO, WTO.
I mean, that is decades of groundwork there. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? They have been infiltrating the WHO since 2004, post SARS, when the WHO actually made them open up their hospitals and stuff like that, and they realized that they couldn't have this whole thing where the WHO could make them do something. Mm-hmm. And then they spent 20 years infiltrating the WHO, and it really paid off for them.
I guess if you're incompetent for long enough, something works.
Or maybe other people are also incompetent. So
I think there are pockets of competence, and there's a lot of incompetence. The problem is that even if you have pockets of real genuine competence, the incompetence elsewhere can really undermine whatever you want to do.
And also we have to talk about how the communist system, similar to the Soviet Union, how it essentially, what Dave was talking about, how it prioritizes lying and deception, right, so that a lot of the competence is never going to come to fruition.
It's not a meritocracy in the same way.
Well, you are incentivized to be incompetent, because then it means you're not going to get arrested and put in prison.
Yeah, that was the big effect of the anti-corruption campaign. There's just a lot of people just stopped doing anything. There was all this apathy because, you don't want to do something that gets you purged.
Yeah, I mean, I think the TV show Chernobyl is a good example of like the effects of the communist system, where like, all the blame shifting, like nobody wants to actually be the person to say that there's a problem, like it causes really bad problems to become really, really bad problems because of the way the system is set up.
Well, I mean, that's obviously what we saw during the initial part of COVID in like January 2020, where the CCP, especially local officials, were covering it up because they didn't want the central authorities to know how bad it was in their region.
And the central authorities knew. They were just letting the local officials take the fall, right? Like we later found out that Xi Jinping actually knew about the COVID outbreak
Very early.
Yeah,
like in
weeks
December.
Before the public admittance of it on a nationwide scale.
Yeah. So it's not a case of like, it was the local officials trying to cover their own asses. It was from the very top. Xi Jinping's got a big ass to cover.
Okay. Well, my takeaway from this is that, it's kind of sad to know that even a friendship that looks as genuine as Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin is based on lies. They don't actually have a friendship medal made of gold.
But if it's just a gold-plated, like zinc.
Zinc is a useful, valuable metal, Matt. Don't knock zinc.
Zinc is what they use in pennies because copper is too valuable to put inside pennies now.
Oh, yes.
Don't get Matt started on the penny thing.
Yeah, let's not go there. I'm glad we have a better
penny for my thoughts.
No, shut up. I'm glad we all have a better friendship than Xi Jinping and Putin.
Who wants to go for ice cream?
I do.
Oh, me too.
Shut up, Matt.